Have you noticed the significance that one's attitude, disposition, content of the heart, the mind, as it were, the significance that plays in well-being in society, the way one approaches life? You look around at what's happening in our culture, and when you have a mindset that says you can't have anybody that actually is victorious or defeated in any situation, let's keep an even plateau, no winners, no losers, let's not keep score. How does that affect one's disposition? Jesus made a statement in Matthew chapter 12. Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. The disposition, the attitude, the constitution of one's heart, one's mind, as it were. And you see that in the way an individual speaks. For the time we have together, we're only going to talk about some things you find in the wisdom book of the Old Testament, the book of Proverbs. To begin with, in chapter 17, verse 22, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And a question that needs to be asked in society is there a place for both of those? To have this kind of exuberance, is there a time when we need to recognize that we really haven't met the standard worthy of victory? The last buzzer rings and the score on the board says that we are the underdogs. We have a deficit. We have not won. We have failed. And that feeling of having that crushed spirit is something that's a reality if you've been in sports. On the other hand, when you actually win, when you have put your best effort forward, and so has the other team, but you and your teammates have come out on top, the exuberance of the moment is something that is well documented. And then if you play sports again, you understand that. I want to talk about the way that our culture has viewed those kind of principles and the problems that have been brought to bear in our lifetime about individuals that really try to eliminate both of those, and you cannot do that. In chapter 15 of Proverbs, beginning in verse number 1, there's a connection between the condition of the heart and what somebody says, very similar to what Jesus said in Matthew. In verse number 1 and verse number 2 of chapter 15 of Proverbs, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I'm sure you've noticed that. Everybody has. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouths of the fools pour out folly. There's a different mindset, a different approach. The condition of the heart in one's speech is actually something that is well documented. Verse number 4, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Or down in verse number 7, the lips of the wise spread knowledge, not so the hearts of fools. Now we're getting into the condition of the heart. And it's talked about in several ways in this 15th chapter. Verse number 13, a glad heart makes a cheerful face, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is crushed. And I can't eliminate both of those and expect culture to actually continue to advance. We've actually put in a situation in the politically correct way to approach victory and defeat where we've taken both of those away. We've paralyzed any kind of growth or incentive for growth in culture. In verse number 14, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on folly. A glad heart, verse 13, a heart that seeks to understand in verse 14. Verse 15, all the days of the afflicted are evil, but the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. That continual benefit of having that cheerfulness of heart. And then you start thinking about what causes that. In those moments where there is a defeat, where victory is not something that is encountered, where cheerfulness is something that seems to be swept away. It does not have to be that way, even in moments of defeat. Verse 21, folly is a joy to him who lacks sense, but of man of understanding walk straight ahead. If you put your best effort forward, even if the scoreboard says you came up as a loser, not a winner, nothing to actually be sorry for because of the effort that was put forth. It just tells you where you need to improve. In verse number 28, the heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. A heart or a mind that thinks is something that is worth far more than somebody that doesn't think, but just pours out evil. If you follow any of those social platforms where people actually express their opinion, you see this all over the place. The mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. How many times have you read through something that somebody posts in response to somebody, and it doesn't answer anything, it doesn't even deal with the subject at hand? They're finding fault with the person, not the content of the statement or the message that was left. That's not really a mark of intelligence, actually just the opposite. So how do you apply this kind of principle to the way that we live? Let's go back and look at some other verses. Verse 18, the same chapter, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. The person that's slow to anger is the person that is the one who will have a heart that is cheerful more times than not, and even in difficult times will not stoop to having that evil kind of disposition that you see all around us in our culture today. Again, verse 21, folly is a joy to him who lacks sense, but a man of understanding walks straight ahead. You see where you need to improve, and you work on that. You don't wallow in imperfection or failure. In verse number 26, the thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but gracious words are pure. Thoughts of the wicked versus gracious words. It's a contrast because the thoughts of the wicked do not express themselves in gracious words. And then finally, down in verse 31 and 32. The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence. There is a need in our culture, perhaps more so in this decade than any I can remember, for a cheerful disposition to be present, even at times when you don't feel like you really are very cheerful because of what's happened. Did you realize that there are so many ailments, sicknesses, even diseases that are either accelerated or maybe even initially brought on by a maladjusted attitude? Do some research. You'll find that in so many instances, problems that are pervasive in our society, hypertension, stroke, heart attack, there are all sorts of things that are accelerated when somebody does not have a cheerful heart, but has a very dismal countenance about them. We're living in a culture where that dismal attitude is becoming more pervasive, and that cheerfulness of heart may well be on its way to being on the endangered list. We need to change that. Some interesting thoughts out of Proverbs. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.